everyone. Sophie and I decided to get together and look at traditional Austrian folk tales and then destroy them by turning them into cyberpunk style stories. So the first story, put on your mental gym jams, enjoy your mental cup of cocoa and just relax. The first story we're going to go through is One for 100-fold. Usually there's a horrible, horrible king who for some reason likes marrying people in almost all of these tales that we're counting. And in the second tale, you're going to find out about a woman who in the morning wishes her children were ravens, and they all become ravens, apart from her daughter who wakes up late, comes downstairs and says, "What's going on?" And she goes, funny story.
There was once an old member of the cypherpunk mailing list who took a noob on his wing. He introduced him to the blockchain and the tribe worshipping its magic powers. The community had lived in the shadows of the Silk Road and dark net drug markets, shunned as fundamentalists, so they fled to Bloc Rico to live under their kind, where they enjoyed the local tax incentives. They gathered each day in sky space to greet the light and praise the Satoshi. There they sat in silence, only interrupted by the gentle tap, tap, tap of the keyboards on which they repeatedly spelled, "Our Satoshi who art in blockchain, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will bank the unbanked, democratize elections, let us control our data and assets, and reverse the tide of climate change. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, centralized, trust-based third-party systems. With that power, the kingdom of heavens will be ours, the intellectual elite. We shall be blessed by the Holy Trinity, information, markets, and crypto. Amen." In the weekly meetups, they performed sacrificial offerings of a Genesis eagle and murmured seldom, "Blessed are those poor in time and rich in tokens. For they will create the kingdom of heaven's here on earth." The noob looked around him and found they have created nothing, and he was still poor in tokens. The noob followed various subreddits with multiple profiles, debated in Discord channels, and clocked double-digit hours day in and day out. He speculated with altcoins, but was torn by both bullish and bearish impulses, and instead of rewarding him, the markets took what seemed like an alpha opportunity and paralyzed him with uncertainty, while transaction fees feed into his gainings. He kept discussing in vain. At last, he went to one of the subreddits and talked to the moderator. The moderator explained to him that the Salmon is a parable, not a guide, but the noob didn't want to listen. To get rid of him, the moderator gave him the advice to go out and seek the Satoshi. The noob at once packed up his Zen book, bade farewell to his community, and took off. When it was evening, he saw a crypto incubator. He went in and asked the owner for a place to put his foam grounding mat, which he slept on to stay in touch with the Earth's electric energy. They asked him what he set out to do. "I want to find the Satoshi," he said. The owner was not surprised, but promised a place for his mat if he would ask the Satoshi to help him increase the value of his portfolio. In the evening, he came into a great city. In the middle of the city was a huge startup space. He went in and asked to stay overnight once again. The CTO was told about it and called for the noob to gave him the task to find out why a startup didn't find enough investors and left the venture capital to get off the ground. The noob promised this too and went on the next morning to heartfelt thanks. In the evening, he felt very tired. Luckily, he saw a DEFCON venue. He went in and once again asked for a place for his mat and told the organizer what he set out to achieve. He gave him the job in case he should find the Satoshi to ask them why his conference to less and less visitors. The noob promised this too and went on his way. But his Zen book slowly ran out of battery. The noob was already down to his last percentiles when all of a sudden he stumbled across 4chan. He hastened to the message board and asked for a login. This was permitted, and the noob told the friendly strangers on the message board why he's undertaking his journey. One member, going by the name of William Shatner, said to him, "You may have yet far to go until you find the Satoshi, but if you will follow me, turn round and say to the owner of the incubator that he can increase his portfolio if he invests in my smart contract published on the Heaven mainnet by buying holy tokens. But first, you buy a few holy tokens yourself. The price of each token sold will be increased by 1% for each token sold after. A 10% fee will be taken from every holy token purchase and distributed to token holders. Then tell the CTO that he can indeed increase his venture capital by buying a few holy tokens, and by telling his investors to do the same in the afternoon. DEF CON organizer tell that he should sell his tickets in holy tokens, which will help attract visitors. So saying, the stranger locked off, and the noob turned back and did as the stranger had bidden him, and thus he gained more than 100 fold.
7 electric ravens. Jim cut the thick stems of her electric carnations so their nickel ozone oozed from their white leaves, and they shriveled. That was the trouble with cheap mimicware. A couple of days and the blooms would look as fake as an automatic cat during a firmware update. Jim tried not to blame herself for losing her children, but she couldn't help it. How they had pleaded for an apple fritter. How she had denied them because they were too hot right now. How foolish she was for teasing them. "Ah, Alexa, please turn all of my children into ravens." And then, to her horror, hearing the sound of the antique nano-manipulator arm creaking to life, and Alexa's neutral and compliant announcement, "It would be my pleasure, Jim." It happened so fast that by the time Jim fought her way through the Christmas decorations under the cupboard, under the stairs, to reach the console to get to the fuse box eventually, it was too late, and her children were flying out of the door into the misty skyscraper canyons of Relicopolis. Many years had passed since this sad happening. Meanwhile, Jim's only surviving daughter, Delete, grew up asking her mother daily about what had become of her brothers before her eyes would roll back and she would start to salivate with the effects of her genetic boosters. Then one night, rifling through a drawer filled with takeaway menus, Delete came across the blood-curdling hollow memory of exactly what had happened during that fateful night. At once, Delete made up her mind to track down her brothers and return them. In her bioreactive plastic windbreaker, after journeying for several days through the fog and mist and bizarrely overly sexualized intrusive advertising of Relicopolis, Delete encountered a colossal pair of micromillion lips, and as the lips parted, she found herself at the entrance to the Titanatrix arcade, a structure so vast and labyrinthine that many an arcade explorer had died in search of a floor plan. As Delete ventured further and further into the arcade, listening to the dull whisper of Phil Collins, she discovered the very long, generic glass corridor after very long, generic glass corridor, where shoppers had left venerating candles and synth bamboo replicas of plastic bags and escalator rosaries, outside the closed shutters of lightning rooms, neurochemists, and just regular Costa coffees. Delete delved into her bag. She was down to her last 2 Luminor tabs when she looked up and her eyes met by 2 dim torchlights of an automatic high priest of the arcade, a Gen 60 Xenox security guard. "My child, it is nearly closing time, and it is unholy to remain. But I must find the electric ravens." She held out her palm so that her mother's hollow memory flickered to life in front of the guard. Her brothers, Zone, Ethos, Credibility 6, Triple Word Score, Control, Little Kudos, Alt, and Christopher, all fighting over those apple fritters. She could feel herself trembling as the nano-manipulator arm crossed the orb with 48 anesthetic needles trailing white-hot micromillion fusing thread, followed by the grappling claw. Seconds later, the wing drives were spinning up like the clicking of knuckles. "By the great arcades, many discounts. My child, my wife, is the influencer." Normally, and particularly seeing as it's a Saturday at the European Poetry Festival, she eats people. But fortunately, I have about my person these loyalty cards from chemists and homeware stores that will serve as a pretty decent substitute for any form of regular food. Good humour. So that night, Delete hid between stacks of pale fire and collected short stories of Perkins Gilman, etc., and watched the influencer dining on glistening QR codes by the romantic light of a stable ASDL line. "My love, the loyalty is non-refundable." "Yes, the arcade is most munificent. Non-refundable loyalty points and delicious biscuits. Now my hunger is gone. Tell me, Xenox, who is the human girl that you are hiding?" Delete could feel her heart drop through her chest, like a group of poets lost on the underground. "Do not be afraid, casual visitor. It will soon be opening hours once more, and your followers are too few for my influence to have an effect. Delete and the influencer spoke for some time, interrupting each other, and then Delete said, no, you go ahead. And the influencer said, no, you go ahead. And then she said, no, you go ahead. Then he said, no, you go ahead. For they wanted to be quite British about everything. That morning, Delete awoke and followed the influencer as far as the fibre optic fountain of Alzeroth, and from there followed the stained glass swimwear adverts with their trendy shades of the saints of the arcade, with their trendy trainers, as far as the bridge to the chain Italian restaurant quarter. After some days, Delete clipped her Penfold Neutronic HoloLenses and came to a castle of glass. It had neither a door nor a gate. Standing on a stack of loyalty cards, she crept gingerly through a window and found herself in a luminous hall, lit by the bioluminescent drapes which fluttered in the amber glow of Outer Relicopolis. In front of her were 7 beds and 7 tables. On each table stood a bowl containing pure luminol, the colour of raspberry washing up liquid, or the dodgy hand soap you sometimes find in train stations. She winced as she drank from one of the bowls. Then, when she had recovered from her server-induced catatonia, she unclipped her HoloLenses, placing them in the dregs of the slimy luminol, and hid herself under a dormant bioethanol sim server. Scarcely had she crept into her lurking place when 12 ravens fluttered into the hall. They settled on the ground and were immediately changed into men. She at once recognised her brothers and emerged from the shadows. "I have come to deliver you," said Delete. But the brothers said sadly, "Dear sister, do not, for in that case, you would have to remain dumb for 7 years. But Delete insisted on it, and from that hour on spoke not a word more, and instead just played Candy Crush. She now remained with her brothers and looked after the chain Italian restaurant castle for 6 years, serving students silently and playing the best of Chris de Burgh on her digihorn. Once the brothers, who were ravens by day, bathed in luminol and undertook a wide flight, and she went into the arcade. She went on to seek this fur cone connector node, accidentally triggering the arcade's possible threat code. Soon enough, the arcade sent a patrol of Gen 60 security androids, and as she gave no answer to their questions, but a warbly rendition of Lady in Red, she was cast into prison in Sophology, a shop kept at a high temperature, filled with nothing but extremely sticky leather sofas. But even in Sophology, all the tortures which they applied to force her to speak were in vain. No matter how many cumbersome futons she was made to fold, no matter how many 3-piece suites she was forced to assemble that had the 3rd page of the instructions removed, she would not talk. And so orders were given that Delete should be deleted forever. But the 7 years of silence were past, and just as she was about to be fed to an autonomous sofa bed with matching storage, forest pattern footrest, Control and Alt and Delete came fluttering in and saved Delete from certain death. The arcade learned the heroic spirit of Control, Alt and Delete and chose Delete for its queen, a pure casual visitor who had stayed for some 7 years. And so it was that the brothers fetched their old mother Jim, who came to the arcade, which slashed all the prices of its HoloLenses and home furnishings for them, and they all lived happily and content until being uploaded into the zettabytes of the necrosphere.